So let's kind of talk about the age. At some point, like, do you feel that once you have age on it, and when you get to that 10, 12-year mark, like, you have a good amount of oak. Like, is it smart to sit there and say, all right, should we take away from the traditional route and say we have a great traditional product, to say, all right, well, let's go ahead and risk it, dump it in these other barrels and see what happens? Because with Foregate and Angel's Envy, definitely a little bit older, versus Thomas S. Moore and Jefferson's, we know, is a little bit on the younger side, where you have that opportunity to actually go and be a little more risky with it, versus saying taking some of your premium barrels and throwing it against the wind and see what happens.
Well, in the case of Foregate, I thought it was smart, because there's a ton of this particular source distillate, tons of it out in the market, where people were creating brands on the same exact. And so it's like, how can we differentiate ourselves and, amplify the flavors that are there with something different? So I thought it was brilliant on their part. Now, if I'm
add barrel strength, by the way, each one of these we're tasting are not at barrel strength. Actually, I don't know. Is the Angel's Envy barrel strength? But I know the Foregate is by far at Angel.
Yeah, I think Angel's is cask strength.
It is, because it's 111.8. Yeah, 111.8 proof. So I believe it's part of their cellar collection that this is.
Yeah, and Foregate is this brand that people, pricing is a whole nother conversation, but people ask me all the time, okay, I want a $200 bourbon. I'm like, well, what about four as a single barrel? No, it's got to be $200. I'm like, okay, go get Foregate. When someone asks me that absurd question, which is often, I send them to Foregate, because it's a product that they can get, and I can stand by it.
And it's usually in the glass case.
Yeah,
like it's
not just
there.
It's not just the other 11 to 12-year-old source product that everybody else just throws a label on and sits it in the glass case. It's unique.
I think they have done a great job with everything that you're talking about.
Sure, but if I'm one of those. If I'm a brand with a legacy brand, top 5, I'm not sure that I would use my older distillate for that. I would be like, this is, we've worked hard for this. Let's hang our cap on that. We can use some of our younger product to, if we're going to get in this space. I
Test
think
the market out a little bit.
I would use probably like 5 to 6 year old if I could.
It's a risk.
It is.
I mean, I think when we're looking at barrel finishes, I think it is a risk, and I don't know. I think that this category is here to stay, but I'm not as confident about it being here to stay as I am with like Toasted. I don't know if because this category has a lot that it depends on other categories. The barrel finishing community, it depends on the port community. It depends on sherry community, so it depends on things that are coming up. And I don't know where. This one's a little bit more volatile for me. And I don't know if I want to risk a double-digit aged bourbon finished in something.
We talked about it before, because experiments can go right or it can go wrong. You also have the idea of just user fatigue when it comes to this as well. For most diehards, which is probably the most of you that are listening to this, I'm sure that your whiskey collection is only less than 5% finished products, maybe less than 10%. And I think that gives into the idea that most like heavy bourbon, I don't want to say elitist, but people that are just definitely like really into the category, like they look at it and say like, okay, I want a pure bourbon experience versus something that's rather traditional. And this is also one of the categories we look at to say, if you want to break out of the mold, for a lot of producers, you want to try to make a name for yourself, you want to be a little bit different, how do you innovate? There's only a few other places left that you can innovate, and this is definitely one of those spaces.
Sure.
And so you've seen a lot of good things, and we actually were trying to find one earlier from like Joseph Magnus. I thought Joseph Magnus did a really good job. One of the other brands that did able to come to the market, and they did 3-barrel finishes on their regular product, which is not heard of. Like that's
right.
You would think like that's a specialty release at the end of the day.